You took Freddie in because the Corleone family bankrolled your casino, because the Molinari family on the coast guaranteed his safety. Now we're talking business. Let's talk business. Yeah, let's talk business. Mike, first of all, you're all done. The Corleone family don't even have that kind of muscle anymore. The Godfather is sick, right? You're getting chased out of New York by Bazzini and the other families. Remember when a movie scared the studios, confused the executives, and permanently changed the rules? In 1972, Paramount Pictures released a risky 3-hour crime drama directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, and Diane Keaton. It was based on a pulpy bestseller nobody at the studio really believed in, and it nearly collapsed a dozen times before hitting theaters. But somehow, The Godfather survived and became the blueprint. We recently lost Robert Duvall, who earned his first Oscar nomination for his iconic role of Tom Hagen. From The Godfather to Network to The Apostle, we here at Remember When just want to say thanks for the memories. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about The Godfather, the behind-the-scenes chaos, accidents, and power plays that turned a movie nobody wanted to make into one of the greatest films ever made. Now let me make you an offer you can't refuse. 15. The film that helped redefine the blockbuster. In 1972, The Godfather pulled in a jaw-dropping $133 million in North America, enough to be in conversation with Gone with the Wind. For 3 years, it was the biggest movie on the planet. No toys, no gimmicks, just power, family, and consequences. Then, Jaws arrived in 1975 and changed everything. Where The Godfather spread slowly through prestige theaters on word of mouth, Jaws exploded everywhere at once, inventing the wide release and the summer marketing blitz. Hollywood learned the wrong lesson immediately. Before Jaws, studios hunted for visionary directors. After Jaws, they hunted for one-sentence ideas that could sell popcorn and toys. One movie proved art could rule the box office. The other made sure it never happened that way again. 14. How Marlon Brando literally invented Vito Corleone. By 1971, studios thought Brando was finished, difficult, unreliable, and expensive. Paramount agreed to consider him under strict conditions. Brando took that personally, so Coppola quietly snuck a camera into Brando's house for an unofficial screen test. Brando went full mad scientist, slicking his hair back with black shoe polish, stuffing cotton balls in his cheeks, throwing on a silk robe, and completely rewiring his posture. When executives watched the footage, they didn't recognize him. One reportedly asked, "Who is this old Italian guy?" That was the moment Brando won the role. For the full shoot, a dentist created a custom-weighted mouthpiece nicknamed the Plumper that pushed his jowls outward and gave him that heavy, immovable presence. Then came the voice, a whispery rasp based on real mob boss Frank Costello, who spoke so softly that everyone had to lean in. Brando realized that true power doesn't shout, and just like that, using shoe polish, cotton balls, and a dentist, he created one of cinema's most unforgettable performances. 11. The studio tried to replace Michael. In 1971, Al Pacino was a skinny stage actor with exactly one small film on his resume. Paramount had zero faith in him and pushed for Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford, and Warren Beatty, actors with big smiles and instant box office credibility. Executives reportedly dismissed Pacino as physically unimposing, with some accounts claiming he was called that little dwarf. Pacino's Michael Corleone didn't explode off the screen. He withdrew, playing Michael as a war hero slowly suffocating under family gravity. Executives kept asking Coppola, when is he going to do something? With the clock ticking, Coppola moved up the filming of the Louis restaurant scene, the moment Michael murders Solozzo and Captain McCluskey. If Pacino didn't nail it, he'd be gone. He started nervous, eyes darting, the sound of an elevated train roaring in his head. Then something clicked. When he pulled the trigger, it was calm, precise, and terrifying. That was the moment the studio finally saw what Coppola always knew. 12. The unscripted slap that shocked the set. Johnny Fontaine is sobbing in Don Corleone's office when Vito stands up and delivers a sharp slap straight across his face. That moment wasn't written the way it plays on screen. Early drafts had Vito simply reprimand Johnny, but Brando escalated it into something sharper and more humiliating. Johnny Fontane was played by Al Martino, a real-life singer with little acting experience. Facing Brando, already nervous and outmatched, Martino didn't need to act shaken. The imbalance was completely real. Whether the line, "act like a man," was improvised or simply delivered with brutal emphasis, the effect was seismic. Moments later, Vito was calm, stroking a cat. The message landed instantly. Vito's kindness is conditional, his discipline is not. 11. The stray cat that wasn't in the script. The Godfather opens with Marlon Brando's Vito Corleone sitting calmly in the shadows stroking a cat. That cat was never in the script. On the day of filming, Coppola found a stray wandering the Paramount lot and handed it to Brando just before cameras rolled. No rehearsal, no plan. A man calmly discussing violence and murder while gently soothing a purring creature. The contrast was perfect. Power wrapped in softness, a predator at rest. The only problem was that the cat purred so loudly it interfered with dialogue recording, and Brando had to re-record much of the scene in post-production. Even so, that single unplanned choice helped cement Don Corleone as something entirely new in cinema. Sometimes history is planned, and sometimes it just curls up in your lap and takes a nap. 14. The real-life enforcer who played Luca Brasi. Luca Brasi is the man even other mobsters fear, and the actor playing him, Lenny Montana, wasn't a trained performer. He was a professional wrestler, a bouncer, and a towering 6'6" presence with real connections to New York's underworld. He didn't need to imagine intimidation, he'd lived around it. When Montana stood in front of Marlon Brando for the wedding scene, the toughest guy in the room completely unraveled. He sweated, stammered, and mangled his lines, not because of bad acting, but because he was genuinely terrified of his idol. Most directors would have called cut, but Coppola leaned in. He built the character around the stumble, adding a moment where Luca nervously practices his lines beforehand. Suddenly, the flaw became devotion, and Don Corleone felt godlike. Then came the cat, another accident turned genius. Not outclassed, outnumbered. Not intimidated, overawed. Not in the script. 9. The word you'll never hear. You can watch all 175 minutes of The Godfather and never once hear the word mafia. That wasn't artistic restraint, it was survival. When Paramount greenlit the film, the Italian-American Civil Rights League, led by Joe Colombo, launched an aggressive protest, pressuring local businesses and complicating permits. Producer Al Ruddy met with Colombo in secret and struck a deal. Film proceeds would go to the league's hospital fund, and every mention of mafia or Cosa Nostra would be scrubbed from the script. Some history experts argue it actually made the movie better. Being unable to name it forced Coppola to show power instead of shouting it. The Corleones felt insular, secretive, and untouchable, exactly how real organized crime operated. The forced silence made the world feel authentic. 7. Why oranges signal trouble. Bright oranges keep appearing right before things go wrong throughout The Godfather, and nobody planned it. Production designer Dean Tavares used them simply because they looked good against all that brown and gold, but a pattern emerged on its own. A bowl of oranges sits at Jack Woltz's dinner table before a horsehead ends up in his bed. Vito stops at a fruit stand to buy oranges moments before he's gone down, the fruit tumbling across the pavement as he falls. At the meeting of the 5 families, fruit bowls line the table, and in Vito's final scene, he fits orange rind over his teeth to make a silly face for his grandson, then collapses. Coppola himself admitted the whole thing started as an accident, but once he noticed the pattern, he leaned into it intentionally throughout parts 2 and 3. Watch the movie again. That fruit stand will never look innocent. 6. The rumor that wouldn't die. For decades, The Godfather carried one of Hollywood's most persistent rumors, that Johnny Fontane wasn't just a character, he was Frank Sinatra. The parallels were hard to miss. Fontaine is a singer whose career stalls, then rebounds after some unseen muscle leans on the right people. Sinatra's own career hit a low in the early 50s before roaring act with From Here to Eternity, a comeback long surrounded by whispers of mob influence. Mario Puzo later claimed Sinatra confronted him at a Beverly Hills restaurant, exploding with insults, and making it very clear he believed the character was about him. Puzo insisted it was a composite, but he admitted he understood exactly why Sinatra took it personally. The controversy became part of the film's mystique, a quiet reminder that sometimes the most dangerous characters aren't the ones holding the gun. 6. The wedding scene felt real for a reason. Coppola didn't settle for typical extras for the opening wedding. He recruited real Italian-American families from Staten Island and New Jersey, people who knew exactly how a wedding was supposed to feel. The tables were loaded with Italian dishes, carefully arranged to look homemade, and the warmth wasn't scripted. It was cultural memory captured on film. Coppola also folded in his own family. Talia Shire played the bride, his daughter Sophia was the infant at the baptism, and his parents and cousins appeared as extras. By blending his real family into the Corleones, he captured an intimacy no studio production could fake. That's why the violence that comes later hits so hard. After 40 minutes at a gathering that feels like your own family, the chaos feels personal. 5. The dark lighting the studio tried to kill. In 1972, Hollywood favored bright lighting, but cinematographer Gordon Willis deliberately underexposed the film and lit actors from above, leaving their eyes in deep, inky shadows. His reasoning was pure storytelling. If you can't see a man's eyes, you don't know what he's thinking. Perfect for a film about betrayal and secrets. When Paramount executives saw the footage, they panicked and pushed Coppola to reshoot with conventional lighting. Coppola refused. Willis also bathed the 1940s scenes in heavy amber, giving the film its signature sepia look. The industry dubbed Willis the Prince of Darkness, and his bold choices influenced the moodier cinematography of films like The French Connection and later shows like The Sopranos. Before Sonny hit that toll booth, movie deaths had manners. Afterwards, the gloves were off. 3. The horsehead swap that made it real. Paramount's prop department provided a fake horsehead, but Coppola found it unconvincing, high school theater vibes. He wanted audiences to feel it viscerally, so he told his team bluntly, "Get me a real one." The crew sourced a head from a horse already destined for a slaughterhouse, matched it to the horse seen earlier in the film, and kept it cold until filming. Actor John Marley had rehearsed all day with the fake prop. While he was away, the crew quietly swapped it out. When Marley pulled back those satin sheets, his reaction was reportedly far stronger than anything rehearsed. Coppola kept the cameras rolling, and that single gamble on discomfort became one of the most talked about scenes in cinema history. 2. The Oscar protest that changed award shows. In 1973, Marlon Brando boycotted the Oscars to protest Hollywood's long history of portraying Native Americans as stereotypes. In his place stood Sacheen Littlefeather, a 27-year-old Apache activist. When Roger Moore offered her the Oscar statue, she refused to take it. She carried a 15-page statement written by Brando, but producers warned her she'd have 60 seconds to speak or she'd be removed. Calm and unflinching, she addressed the treatment of Native Americans by the film industry. The room didn't know how to react. Boos, applause, awkward silence. For the first time ever, an Oscar win had turned into a live protest. Before Brando, the Oscars were mostly about glamour and gratitude. After Brando, award shows became a platform for statements, causes, and controversy, a tradition that has never stopped. 1. The movie nobody wanted to make. The Godfather didn't start as a prestige project, it started as a problem. Paramount was struggling and viewed Mario Puzo's novel as cheap pulp. The studio wanted to modernize everything, move the story to the 1970s, swap fedoras for afros, and replace post-war tension with street-level grit. Coppola fought it every step of the way, arguing this was Shakespearean tragedy dressed in pinstripes. Nearly every major director had already turned the project down, and Coppola got the job because he was young, cheap, and the studio assumed he'd be easy to control. They could not have been more wrong. They hated the casting, hated the shadows, hated the slow pace, and kept replacement directors quietly waiting in the wings. But Coppola, Puzo, Gordon Willis, and Brando closed ranks like a family, protecting the vision, ignoring the panic, and trusting the story. When the film exploded into a cultural phenomenon, the same studio that tried to gut it couldn't stop taking credit. The suits wanted something safe and forgettable. The artists wanted something dark and timeless. Thankfully, the artists won, and cinema was never the same. Some movies don't just age well, they make everything that comes after them answer to them. And that's why 50 years later, we're still talking about it.